On my wedding day, Mom texted, "Don't expect anyone." My side of the aisle was completely empty. Then I saw their photo, vacationing in Hawaii. Captioned, "Family forever." I replied, "Perfect timing," and disappeared. 3 days later, Mom was screaming at my door. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment like this. Your like and share can carry this story to someone who needs hope, healing, or strength today. Red Heart. My name is Natalie Chun. I'm 27 years old. And 3 nights ago, my own mother stood in the doorway of my workspace and said the words that changed everything. "We're converting this into Mason's photography studio. You can set up in the garage instead." She didn't ask, didn't discuss, just announced it like she was reading from a script she'd already rehearsed with my younger brother. Mason was leaning against the wall behind her, arms folded, watching my dual monitors flicker in the dim light. He had this half smirk on his face when he added, "You'll actually probably like it out there. More privacy, right? Less noise from the house." He said it like he was doing me a favor. That room was my entire operation, the space where I built my graphic design business from scratch over 3 years. Every piece of furniture, every cable, every lamp I'd carefully positioned for client video calls. This wasn't just some hobby corner. This was the workspace that funded the mortgage payments they kept falling behind on. I stared at my mother, then at Mason standing there in his perpetual uniform of joggers and a Supreme hoodie I'd made him buy him for his birthday. All I managed to say was one word: fine. No yelling, no tears, no dramatic speech about how unfair it was. I just started unpacking my equipment: laptop, tablet, external drives, the color-calibrated monitor I'd saved for months to afford. I carried what I could in my arms and walked straight past them, down the hallway, like I was actually heading to the garage to set up shop. They had absolutely no idea that when I said fine, what I really meant was, "I'm done being your solution." That night, I didn't go to the garage. I left the house entirely, drove to a 24-hour diner in downtown Phoenix, and started searching rental listings on my phone while nursing cold coffee. By sunrise, I had toured a small loft apartment online, filled out an application, and put down a deposit using money they didn't even know I'd been saving. The very next morning, the calls started. First, my mother. "The electric company is threatening to disconnect. Why aren't you answering?" Then Mason. "Yo, the internet is out, and I have a shoot today. Can you call them?" They called me nonstop, like suddenly I was the only person in the world capable of keeping their lives from collapsing. If you've ever wondered what happens when the person your family takes completely for granted finally walks away, stay with me, because the way they begged me to come back might make you reconsider how much you let people use you. Growing up, I always knew my family operated on a skewed system, but I didn't realize just how broken it was until money, or the lack of it, became the language we spoke. I was the kid who stayed up past midnight perfecting school projects, who took AP classes seriously, who actually cared about building something real. Mason, 3 years younger, was the one everyone called artistic and free-spirited, which apparently translated to "the rules don't apply to him." When I got accepted into Arizona State's design program on a partial scholarship, my mother, Beverly, gave me a distracted hug in the kitchen and said, "That's wonderful. Honey, you've always been so self-sufficient." When Mason barely scraped through an online photography basics course he quit halfway through, she ordered a custom cake from the bakery on Mill Avenue and posted about his creative journey on Facebook like he'd won a Pulitzer. I learned early, don't expect applause when you succeed. Just keep succeeding quietly. After college, when rent in downtown Phoenix was climbing toward $1,800 for a shoebox studio, moving back into our house in Tempe seemed like the only financially logical choice. I told myself it would be temporary, just until I built up my client base and savings from my freelance design work. What actually happened was I slipped into this role as the household's unpaid accountant, IT support, and emergency fund. And somehow, nobody noticed the shift except me. It started small. Mom's hours got cut at the medical office where she worked reception, and suddenly the water bill was overdue. I covered it. Then Mason needed faster internet for his content creation career, and somehow the upgraded plan ended up on my credit card. Then came the streaming services, the meal delivery subscriptions, the phone plan upgrade, the endless DoorDash orders we justified as family bonding time. I told myself it was fine. I made decent money. This was what you did when you loved people. But every time my card auto-renewed another subscription nobody else bothered to track, I felt this small, sharp twist in my chest. When Mason announced he was going to be a visual storyteller and brand photographer, Mom treated it like he'd just been accepted to Harvard. He needs support, she kept saying. He has real talent. He just needs the right equipment. Support meant I paid $850 for an online mentorship program he attended twice. Support meant I bought him a mirrorless camera, lighting equipment, backdrop stands, all on my Discover card that I was still paying off. Support meant I woke up at 3 a.m. to troubleshoot the Wi-Fi when it crashed during his late-night editing sessions because he was on a creative deadline. Meanwhile, my actual work, the work that generated real income, happened quietly in the background. I'd converted that spare bedroom into a legitimate office because nobody else cared about it. I spent my own money on a proper desk, an ergonomic chair, professional lighting for client calls, acoustic panels, so my recordings wouldn't echo. I pinned mood boards to the walls, organized my Pantone swatches, and built an actual thriving business in that space. That room was the difference between me scraping by and me landing high-paying clients with retainer agreements. But whenever Mom talked about it, she said things like, "Natalie's lucky she can work in her pajamas." Lucky, as if it all just materialized out of nowhere, and I hadn't clawed my way to every client, every referral, every positive review. At the same time, she talked about Mason like he was one viral Instagram post away from changing all our lives. She never once asked how many revision rounds I'd gone through on a logo design, or how I'd stayed up until 4 a.m. fixing a client's rushed deadline. She only noticed when a bill arrived, and, like magic, it somehow got paid. I kept a running list in my notes app, just for myself. A private accounting of everything I'd covered. Mortgage contributions when Mom came up short. Utility bills I temporarily took over that never switched back. The car insurance I'd added Mason to after his fender bender. Groceries, takeout, Ubers for Mom when she didn't want to deal with the heat outside. Ubers for Mason to get to networking events that never led anywhere. Every month, I'd update that list and watch the total climb higher. My mother kept calling it family helping family. I started calling it me quietly hemorrhaging money so they could pretend everything was sustainable. The worst part, they genuinely believed they were the ones struggling the most. Mason would sigh dramatically about how hard it was to build a brand, while sitting in the room I paid to cool, scrolling through sneakers he wanted me to buy him for aesthetic purposes. Mom would complain about rising costs, and I'd bite my tongue instead of pointing out that my name was attached to half the bills, keeping her comfortable. I knew, logically, that I'd allowed this to escalate. I'd said yes too many times. I'd stepped in before they ever had to feel consequences. I'd smoothed every sharp edge, solved every problem before it became their crisis. And because I kept doing it, they assumed I always would. That was the system. That was the script we all followed without questioning it. Natalie will handle it. Natalie will pay for it. Natalie will fix it. I just never expected they'd physically shove me out of the very room that made all of it possible. The night my mother told me to relocate to the garage, something in me finally stopped making excuses and started asking the one question I'd been avoiding for years. What would actually happen if I didn't handle it this time? That question wouldn't leave me alone. It followed me into the shower, into my sleep, into the quiet moments between client calls when my camera was off and my professional smile dropped. What would happen if I just stopped? That night, after Mom casually announced my workspace was being reassigned, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my laptop open, but my design files untouched. Instead, I opened Zillow. I typed in Phoenix studio apartments and hit search, telling myself I was just browsing, just curious. The rent prices still made my stomach drop. But for the first time, they didn't feel completely impossible. I had savings, not a fortune. I'd been bleeding money to this household for 3 years, but enough. I scrolled past depressing places with bars on the windows and sketchy neighborhoods until one listing caught my eye. A loft apartment in downtown Phoenix. Exposed brick walls. Large windows with city views. An open floor plan with just enough space for a proper desk setup. And a separate living area. The photos showed afternoon sunlight streaming across polished concrete floors. I could already see where my monitors would go, where I'd hang my portfolio prints, where I'd put the succulent I kept meaning to buy. I checked the rent 3 times, $1,650 a month. High, but manageable. When I pulled up that Notes app list, the one tracking every dollar I'd poured into this house, and did the math, I realized something that made my breath catch. In the last year alone, I'd spent over $16,000 keeping this household afloat. That was almost 10 months of that loft apartment, 10 months of rent for a space that would actually be mine, where nobody could just decide I didn't belong anymore. The next morning, I told Mom I had a client meeting downtown. Technically not a lie. I was meeting with someone who would decide my future. I took the light rail, clutching a folder with my pay stubs, tax returns, and bank statements. The landlord was a middle-aged woman named Patricia, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She showed me the space, and it was even better in person. Small, yes, but clean. Quiet. Mine. We sat at the kitchen counter. Actual counter space, not the cluttered disaster of my mother's house, while she reviewed my application. "You work from home?" she asked. I nodded. "Graphic designer. I just need solid internet and space for a desk." She nodded approvingly. No parties, no excessive noise, no drama. I almost laughed. That's exactly what I'm trying to escape. When she slid the lease across the counter, my hand trembled. My brain threw every fear at me. What if your clients dry up? What if this is irresponsible? What if your family hates you? Then another thought cut through the noise. They already pushed you out of your own workspace, like you were disposable. They've been using you for years. I signed. I transferred first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit, $4,950 disappearing from my account in one transaction. It hurt, but it also felt clean. This wasn't throwing money into a bottomless pit of other people's problems. This was building something for myself. On the light rail ride back to Tempe, I kept touching the new key in my pocket, that small piece of metal that meant I finally had an exit. When I walked through the door, Mason was on the couch yelling into his headset at some video game. Dirty dishes from last night's takeout still scattered across the coffee table. Mom was in the kitchen staring at her phone, muttering about grocery prices. Nobody asked how my meeting went. Nobody noticed anything different. That actually made what came next easier. I started small. That night, when they asked what we should order for dinner, I said I'd already eaten. The next day, when Mom texted asking me to add items to the grocery delivery, I replied, "Can't cover extra this week." budget's tight. It was the first time I'd said no in 3 years. There was a pause. Then just a thumbs up emoji. When the Wi-Fi glitched during one of Mason's editing sessions, and he came pounding on my door. "Nat, can you reset the router? It's doing that thing again." I looked up from my design work and said, "I'm on a deadline. You can figure it out." He stood there like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Eventually, he muttered something and left. The world didn't end. A few nights later, when Mom mentioned needing an Uber to her early shift because she didn't want to deal with the bus, I told her I couldn't put it on my card. Maybe ask Mason or take public transit. She gave me this look like I'd just suggested she walk through fire. "Are you okay? You always help." I forced a smile, just trying to be smarter with my money. It sounded so casual, but inside, it felt like ripping up a script I'd been forced to read from for years. Every no made the next one slightly easier. Behind the scenes, I started quietly moving my life out of that house. The first thing to leave was my external hard drive with all my client work, then my sketchbooks, my favorite pens, my portfolio binder. I told them I was organizing or taking things to storage. None of it was technically a lie. The storage location just happened to be my new downtown loft. I'd finish my last client call of the day, close my laptop, and slide it into my backpack instead of leaving it on the desk. I took down one monitor to get it checked because it was acting weird. Little by little, my office became less my space and more just an empty room waiting for Mason's photography equipment. They were too focused on his next creative breakthrough and Mom's overtime schedule to notice how bare my shelves were getting. At night, after they went to bed, I'd make quiet trips downtown. I'd load boxes into my car, drive across the city, and carry them up to the third floor, one trip at a time. Every time I unlocked that loft door and stepped inside, I felt something in my chest loosen. I'd set a box down, look around at the bare brick walls and the echo of my footsteps on concrete, and think, this is where I stop being the person who fixes everything for everyone else first. I hadn't told them I was leaving yet. I wanted my exit completely ready before I said the words. If my mother could decide in one dinner conversation that I no longer deserved the workspace that funded their entire lifestyle, then I could decide in silence that I was done funding it. By the time they officially converted my office into Mason's photography studio, with his ring lights and camera bags and backdrop stands cluttering the space I'd built, almost everything that mattered to me was already gone. What they were really pushing out wasn't just a desk and some monitors. It was the last shred of leverage they had over me, and they didn't even realize it. Everything finally snapped about 2 weeks later. By then, most of my essential belongings were already in the downtown loft, but I was still sleeping in my old bedroom, still maintaining the illusion that nothing had changed. One Thursday afternoon, I came home from grabbing coffee at a local shop and immediately noticed something was off. The door to what used to be my office was wide open, afternoon light spilling out, Mason's voice drifting into the hallway as he filmed something on his phone. I stepped inside, and my eyes went straight to the empty corner where my ergonomic chair used to be. In its place sat a cheap folding chair from the garage, the kind with rusted hinges that wobbled under Mason as he adjusted his camera angle. My stomach dropped. "Where's my chair?" Mason barely glanced back. "Oh, Mom sold it. I needed a new lens for product photography." The words hit me like cold water. I turned and walked straight to the kitchen where Mom was unloading groceries like it was any other day. "Where's my chair?" I repeated, my voice sharper than I intended. She didn't even look up at first. "Oh, that. I posted it on Facebook Marketplace last week. Got $320 for it. Helped us cover Mason's lens and some groceries. We'll get you something else for the garage eventually. That one was way too expensive anyway. You don't need all those fancy adjustments." I just stared at her. That chair wasn't some random piece of furniture. I bought it with my bonus after landing a major client contract. I'd spent hours researching ergonomic specs because I was getting chronic back pain from hunching over a kitchen table for months. I'd tested it in the store, sat in it, imagined finally working like a real professional. "You sold it," I said slowly, without asking me. She shrugged, finally meeting my eyes with this mix of confusion and irritation, like I was being unreasonable. "Natalie, it's just a chair. We share things in this house. We needed the money. Mason needed equipment. You can sit on literally anything and still do your computer work. You're young. Your back is fine." Something inside me went very, very quiet. For 3 years, I'd tried explaining my perspective, justifying my expenses, gently reminding them what I contributed. It never stuck. But standing there, listening to my mother talk about the chair I bought with my own money like it was communal property she could liquidate for Mason's hobby purchases, I realized talking was pointless. "You didn't share it," I said. "You sold it. And you didn't need money. You needed my money again." Her jaw tightened. "Don't start, Natalie. We're all under pressure right now. You know how expensive everything is. And Mason is trying to build something real. He needs support." There it was again. That word. Support. Always flowing in one direction. I nodded slowly. "You're right. Everything is expensive, which is why some of us have been carrying more than our share for years." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app I'd been maintaining for months, and turned the screen toward her. "This is what I mean." I watched her eyes scan the list. Mortgage contributions, utilities, internet upgrades, streaming services, groceries, Mason's photography course, his camera equipment, his lens rentals, Ubers for her, Ubers for him, all of it itemized with dates and amounts. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "That can't be right. You're exaggerating. These numbers are insane." I tapped the screen. Bank statements, receipts, credit card records. It's all backed up. You can check every single line if you want. Mason wandered into the kitchen halfway through this exchange, controller in hand. "What's going on? Is this about the chair?" "Nat, I told you I'd help you find something on Craigslist. You don't have to make it a whole thing." I turned to him. "You think I'm making this a thing? You sold my chair so you could buy camera equipment for your Instagram account. Equipment I'll probably end up paying for when the credit card bill comes." He rolled his eyes. "Relax. It's not that serious. We're family. We share stuff. That office was just a room anyway. You act like you built some kind of empire in there." A laugh escaped me, sharp, humorless. "You're right. It was just a room. A room where I work the job that's been keeping this family from drowning while you play photographer, and Mom pretends we can afford everything because magic money appears every month." Mom stepped forward quickly, her voice rising. "That's enough, Natalie. You're being incredibly disrespectful. We're all doing our best here. Mason is trying to find his path. You've always been the responsible one. You can handle more. That's just how it is." There it was. The script. You can handle more. Translation. You will handle more because we don't want to. My face went cold. "No," I said. "That's how it used to be." She frowned. "What are you talking about?" I slipped my phone into my pocket, suddenly exhausted by this entire conversation. "I'm talking about the fact that I'm moving out this weekend." The kitchen went completely still. For a moment, I thought maybe they hadn't heard me. Then Mom laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't just move out. Where would you even go? You know how expensive Phoenix rent is. You're not thinking straight." Mason snorted. "Yeah, right. You're mad about a chair and a room, so you're going to throw a tantrum and make everything worse for everyone." I looked between them, feeling strangely calm. You pushed me out of my workspace without a second thought. You sold my furniture without asking. You've treated my money, my time, my energy like it was owed to you. And you never once stopped to think what would happen if I stopped giving it. I paused. I already signed a lease. I've been moving my stuff out for 2 weeks. I'm leaving on Saturday. Mom's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and something that looked almost like panic. You can't do this to us, she said quietly. We need you here. We can't afford for you to just walk away. I know, I said. That's exactly why I'm doing it. Because as long as I'm here, nothing changes. Mason scoffed. You're just trying to punish us. You'll come back. You always do when things get real. Maybe that had been true before. Not anymore. I walked past them, went upstairs to my bedroom, and closed the door before they could say anything else. I sat on the edge of my bed, opened the U-Haul app on my phone, and reserved a van for Saturday morning. When the confirmation came through, I felt this strange combination of terror and relief wash over me. Downstairs, I could hear Mom and Mason arguing in hushed, angry voices. For once, I didn't strain to make out the words or rush down to mediate. They'd made their choice the moment they chose his lens over my chair, his studio over my workspace. I was finally making mine. Saturday arrived faster than expected. All week, Mom acted like my announcement had been some kind of emotional outburst I'd eventually take back. She kept saying things like, once you calm down, we can talk about rearranging the garage, or we can find you another chair eventually. As if a used office chair from Craigslist would erase the fact that she'd sold mine without permission. Mason mostly avoided me, except for a few passive-aggressive comments about how I was really going to screw everyone over because I caught feelings about furniture. I didn't explain myself again. I just worked, packed, and counted down the hours. Saturday morning, the U-Haul van pulled up in front of our house right on schedule. I stood on the driveway for a moment with the keys in my hand, feeling neighbors peer through their curtains at the scene unfolding. Mom opened the front door with this brittle smile, like she still thought she could talk me out of it. You actually rented a van, she said. You're being so dramatic. You have no idea how hard it is out there on your own. I carried the first box right past her without responding. My bed frame, my dresser, my remaining clothes, the lamp I actually liked, the small things I'd intentionally left behind, so they'd notice when they disappeared. The whole time, the house felt eerily quiet. No music from Mason's Bluetooth speaker, no TV running in the background, just the sound of my footsteps and furniture scraping across tile. At some point, I went into the kitchen and grabbed a sheet of printer paper from the drawer. Sitting at the table where we'd eaten 100 takeout meals I'd paid for, I wrote at the top in bold letters, "What Natalie has paid for in the last 18 months. Then I started listing everything. Mortgage contributions when Mom came up short with exact dollar amounts and dates. Electricity and gas I'd temporarily covered that never switched back. The internet upgrade, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify Premium, Disney Plus, all the subscriptions everyone used without thinking. Groceries and DoorDash orders. Mason's $850 photography mentorship. His camera body, lenses, lighting equipment, backdrop stands. Car insurance I'd added him to after his accident. Ubers for Mom when she didn't want to take the bus. Ubers for Mason to networking events that never materialized into actual work. Next to each category, I wrote the total. Then I drew a line at the bottom and added everything up $27,400. I stared at that number for a long moment. That was more than a year's rent at my new place. I grabbed a magnet shaped like Arizona and slapped the paper onto the front of the refrigerator where nobody could miss it. Mom walked in just as I stepped back. What is this? She asked, reaching for it. I moved faster, pressing my hand flat over the paper. You can read it. You just can't take it down. Mason appeared in the doorway behind her, barefoot, yawning like it was any other Saturday. His eyes flicked to the van outside, then to the paper on the fridge visible through the kitchen window. Mom's face went pale as she scanned the numbers. This is exaggerated, she muttered. You're making it sound worse than it was. Nobody asked you to do all this. I laughed, a dry, hollow sound. You didn't have to ask. Every time you said, I'm a little short this month, or can you just put it on your card and I'll pay you back later. That was you asking. You just never followed through on the second part. Mason frowned when he saw his name listed multiple times. You didn't have to write all my stuff on there like that. You're trying to embarrass me. I shook my head. I'm trying to be clear. You both keep telling yourselves we're all struggling equally. We're not. I've been carrying this household while you two pretended money just appeared. I set the pen down and looked at both of them. This is the last month I'll ever pay for this house. Mom opened her mouth like she had something sharp ready to throw back, but nothing came out. Mason just looked angry and uncomfortable, which honestly was the first time I'd seen him feel anything besides entitlement in years. I loaded the last box into the van, then went upstairs one final time to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. My old bedroom looked strangely bare. The bed frame and a few random items would stay. I'd left them on purpose. I wanted there to be empty space where my life used to be. When I carried my pillow down the stairs, Mom was standing by the door, gripping the frame like she needed it to stay upright. Natalie, please, she said quietly. Just think about this. We need you here. We can't afford for you to just walk away. I paused, one hand on the doorknob. You should have thought about what you could and couldn't afford before you pushed me out of the room that paid for all of this. I met her eyes. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because staying here is killing me. She shook her head, eyes glossy. You're overreacting. You'll be back. You always come back when things get hard. Maybe, I said. But if I do, it won't be as your ATM. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and climbed into the driver's seat of the U-Haul. As I pulled away from the curb, I saw them in the side mirror, standing on the front porch. Mom had her arms wrapped around herself. Mason kept glancing between the van and that paper on the fridge visible through the kitchen window. For a second, guilt twisted in my chest like it always had. Then I pictured my new loft, the exposed brick, the sunlight on concrete floors, the key in my pocket, and I kept driving. That night, I unpacked as much as my exhausted arms would allow. I made a simple pasta dinner in my tiny kitchen and sat on the floor among half-open boxes, eating off a paper plate. My phone buzzed a few times, texts from friends asking how the move went, a notification from my bank about the U-Haul charge. Nothing from my family. The silence was almost unsettling, but it also felt like proof that I was finally, truly on my own. I fell asleep on my mattress on the floor, physically drained but mentally lighter than I'd felt in 3 years. The next morning, I woke to my phone vibrating so violently it nearly fell off the makeshift nightstand. The lock screen was flooded with missed calls from Mom and Mason, texts stacking on top of each other in angry red bubbles. For a moment, my old instincts kicked in. Something must be wrong. Someone must be hurt. I grabbed the phone and opened the messages. The first text from Mom was short. Call me. Then, you changed all the passwords. We can't log into anything. Then, the electric bill came, and it's way higher than I thought. Please fix this. Then, we can't afford this without you. Please answer your phone. Mason's messages were more frantic and less polite. Yo, the internet is completely out. I can't upload anything. Did you cancel it on purpose? Then, seriously, Nat, this isn't funny. Mom is losing it. We can't pay all these bills without you. My phone started ringing again. Mom's name flashing across the screen. It buzzed and buzzed, the vibration echoing through the quiet loft. I sat there in the morning light, staring at her name, at Mason's text stacked underneath. For 3 years, every time that phone lit up with their crisis, I dropped everything to solve it. I'd answered from client meetings, from dates, from my own sick days, because if I didn't, everything would fall apart. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. I let it. I set the phone face down on the floor, took a deep breath, and made myself a cup of coffee while it continued buzzing against the concrete. They'd pushed me out of my workspace like I was optional, like my work and my boundaries didn't matter. Less than 24 hours later, they were panicking because they were finally feeling the real cost of that choice. If you've ever wondered what happens when the person holding everything together finally stops answering the phone, this was just the beginning. The calls didn't slow down after that first morning. If anything, they intensified. I let most of them go to voicemail. The old version of me would have picked up on the first ring, already mentally calculating which bills I could cover. The new version looked at their names on the screen, felt that familiar spike of anxiety, and set the phone face down. I still read the texts, though. Curiosity is stubborn like that. Mom alternated between guilt and anger. 1 minute, I can't believe you do this to your own family. The next, I'm sorry. I'm overwhelmed. Please call me. I don't know how we're going to survive. Mason's messages were a mix of complaints and entitlement. You actually killed the Wi-Fi on purpose. My whole upload schedule is ruined. Followed by, at least unfreeze the accounts so we can downgrade to basic internet or something. I drank my coffee, logged into my design projects, and let their emergencies stay theirs. My days in the downtown loft were beautifully, blissfully boring. I woke up, made breakfast in silence, worked through my client deadlines, took walks when I needed air, cooked simple dinners, and went to bed without anyone asking for my credit card number at midnight. 3 days in, Mom left a voicemail that sounded different. Her voice was small, shaky, not sharp like usual. Natalie, I know you're angry. I know you think we didn't appreciate everything you did. Maybe you're right. But the electric company just sent a final notice. I didn't realize how many accounts were in your name. We're behind on everything. I don't know what to do. It's getting hot. Please. I felt that familiar tug in my chest, the one that had made me cave 1,000 times before. But this time, I didn't call back immediately. For the first time in 3 years, I let them sit with the consequences. Phoenix Heat answered her before I did. 2 nights later, when temperatures hit 108 degrees, my phone lit up again. Something in me said, "Pick up." I answered on the 3rd ring. Mom's voice came through fast, borderline frantic. The AC stopped working. It just shut off. The repair company says it'll be at least $650 just to diagnose the problem, maybe more to fix it. We have nothing, Natalie. We're completely tapped out. It's unbearable in here. Please, I don't know what else to do. Old me would have already been opening my banking app. Instead, I took a slow breath. Did you call the electric company to set up a payment plan? I asked. She hesitated. No, you always handle those things. Exactly, I said. I stared at the brick wall of my loft. Mom, I'm not moving back there. I'm not asking you to move back, she snapped. Then her voice cracked. I'm asking you to help. We're suffering. Do you want something to happen to me? Mason shouted in the background. Come on, Nat. This is serious. It's not about internet or whatever. Mom could get heat stroke. Do you seriously not care? There it was. The guilt hook they'd always used. The one that had worked every single time before. I heard it, acknowledged it, and still didn't bite the same way. I'll help once, I said, but not the way you think. Silence. What does that mean? Mom asked slowly. It means I'm not just throwing money at this and disappearing again, I said. If I step in, there are conditions. Real ones. You can say no, but if you say yes, you have to follow through. Mason scoffed in the background. Conditions? This is our AC, not a business negotiation. I ignored him. 1, I'll pay for the AC repair this time, so you don't suffer while we figure things out. After that, I'm completely off your utility bills. 2, we sit down in person and go through every dollar you make and spend. We create a real budget that doesn't include me as a hidden line item. 3, Mason gets an actual job with real paychecks. At least $400 a month from his income goes toward household expenses. And 4, you both stop treating me like 24/7 tech support and bailout service. If you want advice, ask, but I'm not your automatic solution anymore. Mom was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was tight. So basically, you're asking us to live without you. No, I said, I'm asking you to live like I'm your daughter, not your bank account. You can say no, but if you do, you'll figure out the AC without me. Muffled, arguing on their end. When Mom came back on the line, she sounded defeated. Fine, just please get the AC fixed. I called the repair company myself, paid the emergency service fee with my credit card, $7.15, that still stung to watch leave my account, and scheduled the appointment for that afternoon. At least this time it was attached to an actual boundary, not another invisible sacrifice. The next evening, I drove back to the house in Tempe for the first time since I'd moved out. The air inside was cooler now, but the atmosphere was frosty in a different way. Mom sat at the kitchen table with a pile of unopened bills and statements scattered in front of her. Mason hovered near the counter, arms crossed, looking like he was ready to bolt at any second. I opened my laptop and pulled up a blank spreadsheet. Okay, I said, income first. Mom bristled like I'd just asked for her social security number, but she started talking. Hours worked, hourly rate, average monthly take-home after taxes. I typed it all in. Then we listed the actual bills. Mortgage, electric, water, gas, internet, phone plan, minimum credit card payments, streaming subscriptions. Every time we hit something that used to be in my name, I flagged it in red. Formerly Natalie, not anymore. When it was Mason's turn to contribute, he shrugged. I don't really have consistent income. I'm just trying to grow my photography business. That's not income, I said flatly. That's a hobby right now. This column is what you're spending. This column is what's coming in. The math doesn't care about your Instagram following. If out is bigger than in, something has to change. Either you earn more or expenses get cut. Mom looked at the columns, and I could see it finally landing in a way it never had when I was just silently covering everything. I can pick up extra shifts, she murmured. Maybe work some weekends. She turned to Mason. And you can at least get a part-time job. You're on your phone all day anyway. Go work retail or food service. Something. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. I think the memory of sitting in a 110-degree house with no AC did more than any lecture I could give. I emailed them the spreadsheet and closed my laptop. The AC is taken care of. This is on you now. Mom's eyes were shiny. So you're really done. You're just walking away from us. I shook my head. I'm not walking away from you. I'm walking away from being your safety net. I'll still come to dinner, sometimes. I'll answer the phone when I can. But I'm not going back to how things were. On my way out, I glanced at the refrigerator. The paper with my list of everything I'd paid for was still there, edges curled from humidity, but nobody had taken it down. They had to look at it every time they grabbed milk or opened the freezer. That felt like progress. When I stepped outside and pulled the door closed, the house behind me finally felt like what it actually was: their home, their responsibility, their problem to solve. For the first time in 3 years, I walked away knowing that if everything collapsed in there, it wouldn't automatically be my job to rebuild it. 6 months later, my life and that house in Tempe looked nothing like they had the night Mom pushed me out of my office. In my downtown loft, I'd finally made the space feel like home. I bought an actual area rug, hung prints of my favorite design work, and positioned my desk perfectly by the window so I could watch the city while I worked. My days were still full of client deadlines and revision requests, but the stress shifted from, will my family implode if I don't fix this, to, how can I make this design cleaner? Which is the kind of stress I actually get compensated for. I picked up several higher-paying clients, started saying no to the ones who treated me like a vending machine for cheap work, and instead of using every bonus to plug holes at home, I bought myself things that served no purpose except making my life better. A proper bed frame, a yoga studio membership, noise-canceling headphones that were just for me. I still saw my family, but now it happened on my terms. The first time I went back for dinner after the AC situation, the house felt different, like it was learning to stand on unsteady legs. The thermostat was set lower than Mom used to keep it. There were fewer takeout containers. The TV was off when I arrived. Mom had dark circles under her eyes, but there was something steadier in how she moved, like she was finally learning to carry her own weight. Halfway through dinner, she slid an envelope across the table without looking at me. When I opened it, there was a folded check inside for $150. "It's not much," she said quickly, "but it's the first payment toward what we owe you." My throat tightened. I didn't need the money back. Not really. What I needed was exactly what that envelope represented: acknowledgement. Over the next few months, there were more envelopes. Not every month, not on any schedule, but often enough that I believed she actually meant it. Mason didn't transform into a model adult overnight, but he did get a job. The first one at a coffee shop lasted 3 weeks before he realized making lattes for demanding customers wasn't the dream. He ended up at a warehouse facility doing inventory and shipping. At first, he hated it. Then one night when he showed up to dinner wearing a company shirt with his name embroidered on it and mentioned quietly, almost shyly, "I got promoted to shift supervisor," I saw something in his face I'd never seen when he was filming sneaker unboxings. Pride. Real pride. Later that evening, after Mom went to get dessert from the kitchen, he cleared his throat. "I sent you $75 on Venmo for that photography course you paid for. I know it's not the full amount yet, but I'm going to pay you back for all of it eventually." I just nodded. "Thank you." We both understood I was hearing more than the words. He'd stopped waiting for viral fame and started showing up for actual shifts. That was the real repayment. The biggest change, though, was in how they treated my time. The midnight calls about routers and passwords stopped. If Mom called now and I didn't answer immediately, she left a normal voicemail and waited. If Mason texted with, "Hey, can I get your opinion on something?" it was actually asking for advice, not disguising an emergency as a question. We still argued sometimes. Old patterns don't evaporate just because you sign a lease and set boundaries. But there was a line now, and everyone knew it was real. I was their daughter, their sister, not their built-in rescue service. People like to say that revenge is about making the other person suffer, about getting even, about making them hurt the way they hurt you. But sitting in my loft on a Sunday morning, sunlight streaming through the windows, laptop open to a new design project, I realized my version of revenge looked completely different My revenge was building a life they no longer controlled. My revenge was forcing them to grow up by stepping out of the role that kept them dependent. My revenge was proving to myself that I could thrive without sacrificing myself on the altar of their convenience. My mother learned to budget without assuming her oldest daughter would silently fill every gap. My brother learned what it feels like to earn his own money instead of spending mine. And I learned that loving your family doesn't mean setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. If any part of this story sounds familiar, if you're the one everyone calls first and thanks last, the one who carries burdens you never agreed to carry, I want you to ask yourself the question I avoided for years. What would actually happen if you stopped fixing everything? Not in some dramatic disappearing act, not to punish anyone, but as a conscious choice to finally choose yourself. You might be surprised by who falls apart, who steps up, and who, for the first time, learns to stand without leaning on you. I used to think boundaries with family were selfish. That's what they taught me. That's what the guilt told me every time I considered saying no. Now I know the opposite is true. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're foundations that teach people how to treat you. They're how you stop toxic cycles from continuing. They're how you make sure you don't become the kind of person who uses their own kids as an ATM and expects gratitude for it. Some nights, when the city lights twinkle outside my window and the only sound is the hum of my laptop fan, I think about that paper still hanging on their refrigerator, the one listing everything I paid for, the one they see every single day. I don't think about it with bitterness anymore. I think about it as a reminder, for them and for me, of what happens when you take someone for granted long enough. They thought pushing me out of my office and selling my chair would be the story they'd tell themselves, that I'd be dramatic for a week, then come crawling back because I needed them. 3 days later, they were calling me nonstop because they finally realized I was the one holding everything together, and I'd stopped catching them when they fell. I built a different life on the other side of that closed door. A life where my success belongs to me, where my money stays in my account, where my boundaries aren't suggestions. And honestly, that's the only family dynamic I need. If you were in my position, would you have done the same? Or have you already walked away from people who kept calling themselves family while treating you like a resource to be extracted?